You're listening to Investify, preaching financial independence and assisting investors to achieve a more flexible and free lifestyle through smart financial planning and real estate investing. If leaving the corporate world and jumping into this thriving industry is what you desire, tune in and listen to stories of like-minded individuals who made the leap to financial independence. Equip yourself with the right tips and tricks to start your real estate journey, making active or passive ventures that are highly profitable and rewarding. Here are your hosts, Craig Curelop and Zeona McIntyre.
What's going on, everyone? You are listening to Investify. My name is Craig Curelop, aka the Fi Guy, and I'm here with my co-host, Zeona McIntyre. Z Money, how you doing today?
Oh man, I'm doing good. I'm feeling excited.
Are you feeling new? Are you feeling new? Are you feeling fresh? Are you feeling like the slate has been cleared?
I'm really fresh.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. Yeah.
I feel like we've cleaned the slate. We've got like a new fresh Hawaiian acai bowl right in front of us, and we're about to scoop it all up, and it's gonna taste real good.
Oh my God, you're such an awkward tater. I like it though. I like it.
If you've never been to Hawaii, if you ever go to Kihei, make sure you go to Hawaiian Moons and have their acai bowls. They are like the best things on this planet. So
I'm so glad you got those. I'll have to have one like next week. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We've gotten like hundreds of those in the 2 months that we were there. So
yay.
Yes.
Well, what is new in your investment life? Do you have any investing news personally?
So this year, 2021 was really a year of stabilization for me in my kind of investment space. I finished 3 rehabs. We're about to get them all. They're finally done. We're about to get them all like in rented out. And once those are rented out, we can kind of breathe for a minute. And then we're going to kind of look towards the greater pasture of commercial, which I'm very excited for.
I'm excited for it too, because you're going to come back and teach us all these things. Everybody's waiting.
Hell yeah, I will. And what about you, Z? Anything big and new in your life?
Yeah. I was supposed to close today on a beach house. I have a Panama City Beach, Florida vacation rental. And I think it's going to be delayed. It looks like Monday, hopefully, if I'm lucky. But yeah, it was kind of fun. It's fun to have a new place, and it's also that fun, scary thing. So I'm excited because always wanted to have a beach place, and this is also the most expensive thing I've ever bought to date. So wish me luck.
Invest to Fi retreat spot in Panama City Beach. We'll see you all there. Yeah. Speaking of Panama City Beach, we got an awesome guest today, Dan Kryzanowski. I pronounce his name. But Dan, you know, I love you. He's from Rocket Dollar. He's got a really cool story about how he got into investing passively and then raising money and then stepping away from raising money to start this whole Rocket Dollar thing. And now he's back to raising money. So it's kind of cool how you can kind of jump from thing to thing. And that's the glory of financial independence.
Yeah, this is a high level episode. He uses a lot of jargon and terms. So, you know, you might have to go back and re-listen to this one, but it's got a lot of good meat and bones in it. So definitely take a listen all the way to the end.
Yeah. And if you have any retirement money that you are looking to invest with, right? You don't want it in the stock market. You want to invest in real estate with it. Rocket Dollar is a phenomenal platform to use. And if you look at our show notes, we've got a link and you can definitely, take a look at our show notes and you'll get the link to sign up. So with that being said, let's bring Dan on the show. Dan, welcome to the show. Dan, you can tell I don't know your last name I don't know how to pronounce your last name because I didn't say it. So why don't you say your last name for everybody?
Sure. Kryzanowski, and they call me Dan K. What a surprise.
Dan K. Yeah, those Polish last names, they're always like Zeona, and no one knows how to pronounce them.
It's a beautiful thing. And my mom was a Mozaleski with a much easier spelling now. Her mom was Leposhenik, and then who knows before that. But we've been, there's been a lot of Z's and different letters of and in and out of our, thrown in and out of our names for generations. But I think we finally got it settled here.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Dan, thanks so much for coming on the show. I know we've seen each other probably at like every FinCon that I think I've been to. I think I've seen you there, and I've talked to you at almost everyone, but now we get to dive a little bit deeper into your story. So why don't we take it back to when did you first hear about financial independence?
Yeah, I think my big light bulb moment, I know we're hitting the holiday season here, so first happy holidays to everybody. I was a co-best man in a wedding on the shortest and probably the coldest day in Staten Island history. So, insert your Colin Jost or Pete Davidson joke here, but it was chilly. It was real chilly. As I was getting ready, the other gentleman, we're getting to know each other. I say, hey, what do you do for a living? And he says, flip houses. I'm like, okay. And like, what does that mean? He said, 15%. My ears perk up. And then he said, did you know you can use your retirement dollars? And at that point, kind of the whole beautiful world of alternative investing and tax advantaged and taking back control of everything just completely opened up for me.
So what year did you say this was?
This would have been, I'd say 2013 or 2014.
Okay. So winter 2013, spring 2014. And you're at this wedding. This guy tells you 15%. What does 15% mean? Like, how did that register in your head?
Yeah. So what it was, and I'll step back a little bit. So for me, I think a good inflection point was the year 2008. My math is simple. I graduated college in 2000. I turned 30 in 2008, the financial crisis. And from here, I think much like I'd say some younger folks experience with COVID, you get a pretty good wake up to say, okay, what do I want to do with my time? How do I want to frankly play life out? And at that point in the middle of 2008, doing I'll call it the reverse commute to a General Electric, a GE office in Connecticut was not where I wanted to spend my career. And what used to irk me all the time is I'd have these ideas and I still would read the Austin Business Journal. I'll remind you, this is a good decade before everybody moved to Austin or Denver or any of these fun cities. So I felt like I was in, World War II and would get papers in the mail. I still subscribed to the Austin Business Journal. And I read about all these amazing things and people I met the first time I lived in Austin. I'm like, you know what? I got to get there. And I knew that folks have had successes, based whether it's in real estate or otherwise. So this was kind of the backdrop. And I dabbled in the equivalent of crowdfunding before crowdfunding. Comedy tour was my first investment. Great tax write-off, not much else. And but this was the true light bulb moment that was like, wow, I can actually, I just did quick numbers in my head and said, well, if I put 100K here, this might pay for my rent, for a while. See, you get real simple, basic things and, going through the hierarchy of needs of what you need in life. And we said, wow, I can be in a pretty good spot pretty quickly. So that was my first step. Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the hierarchy of needs. So I want to just highlight that part. Can you kind of go into what that is? Because that's kind of something that we talk about a lot in the financial and independence space. Yeah.
And I'll talk personal. We can also go macro because my head and heart is so attached to it that I think, we as a country world are experiencing in the next, especially decade. But for my little situation is, we have air that's free, we breathe, water that's free, big asterisk. I know that might change. Food, good food is getting more expensive, but relatively not too expensive if you're in the middle class. And then shelter. And then after that, everything in one way or another is a choice of what to do, when to do it, some sort of luxury to have experiences if you want them in a different place than where you are today. With that kind of as a backdrop, and of course, on the other end of the bell curve, somebody's taking some tax somewhere ultimately. So you got to kind of recognize that. But kind of in terms of the hierarchy of needs, and some folks do, a FIRE as a minimalist, but I view it as, you have your liquid bucket, and then you can also take advantage of kind of a 60 plus bucket. And let's say if I live till 80, I knew that I had another 30 years in this bucket, then a 20 years in another bucket to start kind of planning things out for kind of what I want and what I might want to achieve.
So I just want to kind of like steer us back to the story so we don't get too off, just on this tangent. But I want to know just a little background of like, what were you doing as your job before you met this person? And it sounds like 15% was a big number for you. So were you just traditionally doing index funds and planning for about 7% after inflation, 7 or 8?
Yeah. So, I grew up on a trading floor. And to give you a little context, and I think this will resonate, I'd say, particularly with the 40 and over crowd, Gen Xers and such. My dad was a high school principal. My mom was a social worker. They were both pensioned. Having a house and having a pension and everything stacked to retirement with your typical 60-40 allocation, that seemed okay and was going to work for them. So even with me going to Wharton, coming out of the womb, working for Wall Street, that was still kind of my mindset until about 2008 when it got shaken up a little bit. So from there, as I started to, dabble in alts, I realized this is where you can start thinking in terms of, one, multiples, call it for your startup sort of investments, but then also double digits in terms of things such as real estate. So that's why when I looked at 15 of something, and nothing is truly quote unquote guaranteed, but I would say the gentleman that I did invest with, he hasn't missed a payment in 20 years to his investors. So in my mind, I consider it pretty close.
So he didn't convince you to go in and start flipping houses. He just wanted you to pay him to fund his flipping, and he provided a 15% return.
Yeah, I was his bank, and he was a gentleman my age, and he had the track record of, folks probably from fellow peers to, doctors, people in their retirement. That was basically his bank, and I thought that was awesome. And to this day, when I have spare change, he gets it.
So this is essentially note investing, right? For those of you that, right? And people can look at it in many different ways. Hard money, note, really you're a private lender. And he did a wonderful thing by, dangling a carrot in front of you to get your money, right? So this is a win-win scenario. You're happy with 15%. He gets money to go make more money on his flips. And the best thing about it is like, do you know how to find off-market deals? Do you have a wealth of contractors and all that kind of stuff? Maybe you do, but you don't have to know that stuff, right? Because again, it's like you can focus on what's actually generating money for you while still earning a pretty good return on the side.
I'd like to just kind of talk about pros and cons of this sort of position. I think for a lot of people, it sounds scary. It's like, oh, you just meet this guy and then you're going to give him all your money. And what happens if he runs off with it? But I think what I've heard from people that I know that take private money is that they value that relationship so much that they will pay that person. They'll do everything they can to keep that relationship good, even if the deal goes bad, because they'll need that person for other deals. And so you're actually in a pretty good position, unless it's somebody who's never done it before and then they're just going to run away and never do it again, right? Yeah. So awesome. Yeah, what are some of the pros and cons that you've experienced in that position?
So as we'll call generically, a hard money lender, I've had with the gentleman who I referenced, it's been a great experience. As we both have started families and stuff, it's as I say, relationships matter. This is a good one that we have. Separately, there was a time, I call it maybe I had the baby bliss going on, and a friend, somebody I trusted, said, hey, this guy I know is flipping a house. I'm like, oh, I know how this stuff works. I went up, I visited. It was in a nice part of Austin. It looked done. I thought, cool, easy money, a 3-month loan. Well, the 3 months became 6 months. I tried to play lawyer. That was a bad idea. I became very rich on paper because of late fees. And then I learned the hard way of, when things don't go well, how things can vary state by state. And, very long story short, I got 70 cents on the dollar, but I call it my real world MBA. And I'm much happier that this was earlier on, before you start writing, 6-figure checks for, what is effectively a hard money loan.
Yeah.
So if I meet somebody at a party tonight or something, right, and they say 15%, right, I'm in the same situation you are in. What gave you comfort to give this guy what sounds like hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Yeah, no, I guess if you had to hashtag me, relationships matter is a good one. So as I shared, he and I were co-best men in a wedding with somebody I grew up with that, since I was 7, 8 years old, trading baseball cards, grade school basketball, you name it. So I consider, who he would consider as his best men, something of value. I think the rest of the wedding party might have been cousins and such. So, with that alone, that was a huge check mark. Now, that said, I was probably a big pain in the ass for those before I wrote that first check. And I think the first check was $10,000. So I wasn't going all in. And now it's funny, raising capital, I'm on the flip side of that. And sometimes it's like, oh, here's somebody calling again. But that, and I respect this, somebody says, hey, I want to, give more money to less people, and I want you to be one of those persons. So I was on the flip side of that coin, 8 or so years ago. And now it's, to the point where I can text him, he can text me, and then, you get magic, you get some money in the mail in a few months. And so I think the upfront work's paying off.
I love that. I love that. I think a lot of times people think that, you have to like dive in 100%, but you can totally just like get your feet wet, right? Like 10 grand, see how it works out, right? If it doesn't work out, okay, you find someone else. And even still, like I know I did a $10,000 loan to somebody who's doing flipping here in Denver. And I had to keep asking him every month for the payment. Some months he would miss. It took him forever to get my principal back. And I ended up getting paid back in full with all my interest paid and everything, and even late fees. But I'm not going to do another deal with him because I had to chase him down. Right. And so I love that like idea of just getting the feet wet and then hopping out. And so this was back in 2013. Is that right? We're still kind of in 2013 when you're first discovering this?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Z, do you have anything to add?
No, I just want to know what happens next, because this is how you heard about financial independence. So where did that click for you?
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing here, so at the same time, my 9 to 5 and, basically through this decade, I just say that the 2000s was my corporate decade at Merrill Lynch and GE. This was my Austin decade, and call it the fintech, real estate tech sort of world. So, still working a 9 to 5 for a majority of this. I was in self-storage of all things. And I know self-storage is a headline, but trust me, a decade ago, it wasn't on target. And I was the first guy when I had hair, a little bit of gray hair, to be the account manager, and had the benefit to meet all the CXOs, all the CEOs, COOs, CMOs in the world of self-storage. And I realized these guys lived a pretty good lifestyle. I know storage itself, it's not that complicated. It's a box. One person works the front. People come in and out once a year. That's it. So, with that was the seed that I saw as, wow, this could be something for the long term. That could be a niche that could be extremely valuable for me. And like anything, though, I was a sponge. I mean, you go to these shows, you got to be pretty, these are your clients, but I did a whole lot of listening for that year. Outside of course, my company's motto being champagne every day and, doing what you had to do. So.
Wow. So you went from giving loans at 15% pretty passively to then jumping into a fairly active business, at least to set it up and all that, into self-storage. And you skipped the whole residential side. You kind of just went right into commercial.
Yeah. I mean, for me as an investor, or, even as I was kind of unconsciously raising capital, residential just wasn't of interest for me. As I said, I get the concept of flipping houses, and those always be a piece of my portfolio that my money goes towards that. But it was never of interest for me. So I like the commercial side. I will preface, during my time at General Electric, I was in the real estate business and other hybrid joint ventures that were effectively real estate. So I've had more touch points with CRE than on the residential side.
Okay, gotcha. And so what year was it when you decided to get into the self-storage stuff?
Yeah, so it was concurrently. As I said, this was when I was in the 13, 14, when I probably, funded the first flip.
Okay. So you're like, the flip got your wheel spinning, and then you kind of looked at what you're doing in your career and you're like, oh, there's some connection here. I could do what's in my career and I could do it myself. That at least is the connection that I'm seeing that you made.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And so when did you let's talk a little bit about maybe your first commercial deal, your first self-storage unit. Like, how did you learn about this stuff? Was it just through your job, or were there other podcasts and books you read? Because you mentioned before, it wasn't really, mainstream like it kind of is today.
Yeah. This was probably before the world of before podcasts were common. As I said, it's a great benefit. Right now it seems like shows are easy to get on. And Z, with you and Craig, with your backgrounds, getting the VIP access, being on stage, it becomes natural for us to just talk with other speakers and learn. Coming in new, especially when you're a vendor in the space, not as much. But as I said, I was a sponge. At these shows, and once again, you are wining and dining clients, which is fine. But I've had a lot of good deep sit downs where people would, whether it's the back of the napkin, however, to show me like, hey, here's how a cash flow model works. Here's what, what you get from paying 6% of top line revenue. We went into really good details, and people that I've learned to respect versus people that were just, more of a face, more of a headliner, those that I learned to respect, I would seek them out at every show and we'd sit for coffee. And they had books, kind of the quick reads, the thin 100-page books. I would read all their books, bring it all in. And one of my other light bulb moments, and this was also, remember it was cold, so probably February of 14, if I have my year right. Another big light bulb moment for me was learning about economic occupancy. So physical occupancy is pretty simple. You have 100 units, 90% filled, you're at 90% occupancy. Economic, for folks that might seem like a tough term, it's when people say, if the three of us and, I guess we'd say Elon Musk were on the call, what's our average wealth? Our average is probably, 10 trillion Dogecoins or something like that. But the median is whatever we have here. So, with that as a background, once I learned about economic occupancy, coincidentally, the two folks that met with me, and we sat, it was a coffee that turned into 6 hours, became two really good friends. And these are folks at this time I felt were the top operator and top marketer in storage. And, fast forward many years, the one gentleman just had a tremendous, probably 9-figure plus exit in storage. And also my friend, she in marketing has a tremendous client base and other successes. So like anything, they talk about betting on the jockey, not the horse. I think I bet on some of the right jockeys of who I wanted to be along with for this ride and continue to learn from. And it's been a great, almost decade-long relationship.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So again, networking, I know you're a master networker. I see you at all these conferences and stuff. And that's really where it starts, right? I know a lot of people are hesitate to, maybe throw down $1,000 for a weekend, in Orlando or wherever the heck you're going to go for a conference, but that you get paid back in multiples if you just meet the right person. And it's almost impossible not to meet somebody at these events, right? Unless you stay in your hotel room the whole time. So, I highly recommend that. So why don't we jump into your first self-storage deal? How did you find it? How did you fund it? How did you what role did you play? And how did you use your mentors in that role?
Yeah, so my buddy, John Manus, Pinnacle Storage Property. So John went on his own in 2015, I think late 15. The math is easy because my son was born on St. Patrick's Day in 16. And it's a unique step. And right when John did it, I'm like, I'm in. I'm your first investor. And my wife, she I think she saw the light, where this could go. And she's like, yeah, I'm in. And I mentioned it to a few friends. And I think it goes back to that credibility point. What matters. And people said, okay, Dan, yeah, I don't know much about storage, but I kind of trust you on this. Fast forward a few years, they've all been really happy. So, with that also, you're gaining this big, I always think what's great is if your hobby becomes your livelihood, it's really exciting. And what I was doing very unconsciously at the time was building this muscle, while still working full time to basically evangelize, something like storage. And then thereafter, we talk about like and trust, you can have 100 likes, 1 million likes on Facebook, but trust is when money moves. So knowing that I probably earned the trust over people and seeing my friends and other peers move money into this deal was, I don't want to say, I definitely did not take it for granted. I probably didn't even notice it. I think John and some others have. So, when we speak 5 years down the road, I'd say the last 5 years, I had this great ability to raise capital very consistently with a certain group of folks that I love to interact with. And then also, on a subset of my own self-storage deals.
So I'm curious, did you guys set this up like a syndication or something like that? And then were you a general partner where you were bringing in the funding partners, the limited partners, or were you doing asset management where you were doing all the numbers in the background? How did that look?
I was, just full disclosure, I was not a GP. There was a partner set. And like anything, I think for folks that are coming for a GP, I think it's good, as I say, to kind of date before you get fully married. So on the first, for few deals, I think some of the partners were figuring out who became the ultimate partnership, which was on deal 2. For me, I always like to say, once again, if you like the jockey, where can the success and the upside be? And our arrangement was on the backside. So it wasn't your very typical GP, but it wasn't this, kind of call it one and done finder up front, which ended up being much more lucrative for me on the back end.
Yeah. Real quick, can we just do a quick description as to what the difference is between a GP and an LP?
Yeah, so LP limited partner. My one buddy says it, Ken Harris, he runs our real estate meet up here, and he says, when you're an LP, you get to look at the paint on the wall. When you're a GP, you get to choose the paint, or if the building even has paint. So, as an LP, you write that check and you have to have faith in who you wrote the check. And that's it, though. You can sit back and relax, and hopefully, you receive, some payment back. As the GP, you're the one doing the work, which, like in any spirit of risk return as a general partner, you would hope that you are getting, a much greater return at the end of the day, which, if you do a good job and you pick a good property, that can happen.
Is this a property that you guys are still in? And what can you kind of tell us the structure of the deal? Like, what was the total capital raised, or the cost of the purchase? And then what's the lifespan been like? And
yeah, so this recently sold. I mean, this was property one of a portfolio of, let's call it 10 to 20 properties that recently sold. The pref, I believe, was 10%, which made sense at the time. And it wasn't a stair step. This was an existing property. So we were able to cash flow on day one. And it was, I think this one was a 10, either an 8 or a 10. I invested in a lot of early deals.
But, what does that mean? What does that mean? 8 pref, 10 pref?
Sure. So let's just use round numbers. Let's say you invested 100,000 at an 8 pref that pays quarterly. Every quarter, you, as an investor, as an LP, limited partner, receives $2,000.
Right, and that's 8% annualized for the quarter. For those of you guys who the math real quick.
So the benefit that I had, I invested so my personal, I also invested as an LP outside of the benefits of raising capital. Mine was in a Roth IRA, which, is post-tax money. So I like to say, if you're confident in your investing abilities, I would say it's a fair consideration to pay taxes now on the little seed versus what the big tree may become. So I made a conscious decision to do Roth conversions on certain cash amounts in my retirement. Once again, I had the benefit for being corporate 10 years, having a real sizable 401k. And then I said, you know what, I don't know where the world's going to be in 25, 30 years. I don't know what the tax rates are going to be. Plus, I think I'm pretty decent at investing, especially in alts. I think that's where you get the alpha. That's where you get this multiple. Let me pay now, not in the future. And looking at that property alone, I think it was like a 3x and change. So for that little property alone, I think it was a good one. Concurrently, I referenced my wife invest. And so what was nice, come tax time, we received a K1. So, unlike, and I'll say, if we're going to compare two deals, my one buddy that flips houses, well, you got 15% or double digits, whatever it was at the time, but you received a 1099. So effectively, come tax time, this is like your checking account, your savings account, a CD. Separately, as an LP, where it's a K1 structure, come tax time, there's a lot of depreciation, a lot of benefits. So although in our simple example, that 100K in got you, 2,000 times 4 got you 8,000, you would presume that taxes were probably close to zero for all those years.
Right. And so the reason for that, right, is because on these big commercial projects, oftentimes they do what's called a cost segregation study. Is that the same for self-storage? Right. And so, can you explain that a little bit?
I'm not the expert. Zeona Weiss, who I love, and if you're on LinkedIn and you haven't seen Zeona, then I don't think you're really on LinkedIn. But Zeona is the cost seg king, and there's many others out there that are tremendous professionals in cost seg. But what I would say, this is, frankly, when to buy stuff, especially if you have some foresight of the tax code, when it may be wise to buy something in 1 year versus another. Depreciate it all in this year versus another, recognizing bonus depreciation. I'm not a CPA and I don't want to kind of mislead, but I think by knowing the certain property, there can be, whether it's a calendar year, what revenue you expect, if you're also doing, say, value add or add-ons in the back, which we can talk about a bit, all of that can play into, frankly, just lowering your what you have to pay in taxes.
Yeah. So real quick, I can try to give kind of like the layman's level explanation of it. And so basically, like when you're buying a massive commercial asset, like a self-storage unit, a multifamily apartment or something like that, it can be in like the tens of millions of dollars, right? Basically, the IRS says, hey, this asset worth $10 million is going to depreciate over 39 years, right? For residential, it's like 27 and a half. For commercial, it's 39. So instead of just on a typical basis, you would depreciate that. You would take that value divided by 39. What a cost segregation study does is it says, okay, like the refrigerator probably won't last 39 years, right? The carpets and the windows and the rugs or all that won't last 39 years. So an engineer will go in and say, okay, we'll depreciate all the refrigerators over 5 years. So you get to like basically take some of that depreciation and upfront pay it. And so in a year where you're maybe making, I don't know, $500,000, you may have $500,000 write-offs because of that accelerated depreciation on that big asset. And so a lot of people who have a lot of money go into syndications for this reason only, for the tax advantage. And they buy one massive property a year. Maybe they put a couple $1 million in it just so they can get those depreciation benefits. And that's why, I don't know if you ever hear like, Donald Trump or whatever, talk about how he paid $750 in taxes. He legitimately only paid that because he has these massive depreciation expense, which is the IRS allows you to do. And so that's just a way to avoid paying taxes. But when you go to sell that asset in the future, you have to pay all that back. Right. And so that's when, you start talking about maybe 1031ing or maybe, buying another one every single year to always have that amount to offset. Dan, so, we know that you've been an LP in quite a few deals, and I know that you've done some sort of money raising and all that kind of stuff. Can you talk a little bit about what does it take to raise money? How do you do it? How do you find the people? And then maybe like what kind of payment have you been getting for that?
Yeah, so on the capital raising side, it helps having thick skin. I'll start with that. And I think also it, as I shared, I was born on a trading floor. So when you're used to a kind of a highly transactional business, but also recognizing maybe if you're ever in enterprise sales, a long-term sort of sales cycle, you kind of need, I feel you need both of those muscles concurrently in the capital raising side, particularly if you want somebody that's going to be a legitimate repeat investor that has a fair amount of money versus somebody that's going to, ring you up and down for, the one favor, like the 125K check you were saving for, a VIP, and they're going to be the biggest headache. So, with that said, I think education is the biggest piece. And as I said, the benefit I had, especially with storage, even if it wasn't a storage deal, it's something cool to talk about. And then secondly, even if somebody was funding from their piggy bank checking account, letting them know they can use their retirement dollars is another sort of like wow factor. I call it, it's something country club cool that, whether you're in boots or Sebagos or, hiking shoes, it's a really cool thing to talk about with somebody that, is open to passive or alternative investing. So I'd say first and foremost, it's been leading with, education.
I think so. It sounds like what you do a lot of is people think they have money to invest, right? Maybe they think they have $100,000. They give $100,000 to some flipper, and now they have no more money to invest. So you go to them and basically ask them, "Hey, like, do you want to have money?" And they say, "Oh, you don't have any money." But then you're like, "Oh, wait, do you have money in your retirement accounts?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I've got like $300,000 in my retirement accounts." He's like, "Well, you can use that, and instead of earning a 7% on the market, you can earn 15% over there, right? It's literally double your percentage." Is that kind of like the education that you're teaching these people?
Yeah, that's a great high level one. And, I've had the benefit. I mean, Craig, as you see us at all these shows, I talked to over 500 sponsors who, now that I raise capital, I'll call them my peers here to share that piece of education. And what I would suggest to anybody listening that is raising money or thinking of raising money in the future, the one sentence I'd say a good takeaway is to share with your prospective investors and your current investors, say, hey, folks, did you know you can use your retirement dollars to invest in my deal? And folks that have shared this on a consistent basis, and you don't have to be an expert, but literally that one sentence tend to get 10 to 20% of their raise done. So I like to joke, you get to take off Friday because you got your raise done. And the beautiful situation, and I see this play out a bit more in the startup world than real estate, but somebody says, wow, I'm here in Texas, so I guess I'll have to say Exxon on one of these. I worked for Dell here in Austin. I worked for Dell all these years. You worked alongside of me. You went off and had a startup. Really want to invest with you, but I have, all three of my kids are at SMU, Rice, all these private schools across Texas. I'm just tapped out. I'm not liquid, even though I just retired from Exxon. And then you can remind your buddy to say, hey, what's in your 401k? Well, the old 401k is $1 million. Did you know you can use part of that to invest in my company? And that's what I think is kind of the true win-win situation, where somebody can finally take back a portion of their retirement, invest in what they want, when they want, where at the same time, somebody else is getting their deal, company, et cetera, funded quicker.
And so as a capital raiser, what do you get out of it? Do you get a percentage of the money raised? Do you get a little piece of the equity? Maybe it's both, but what would you prefer as payment?
Yeah, so it depends, and it depends on who you are raising money for. So, and I'll preface, there's a few. I am licensed right now, and I'm also not a CPA or a lawyer. So I'll share what I feel is kind of public terminology and information. Is that if it is your company, you can raise. Thereafter, every state has its own regulation. This is, I think, something for folks that don't want to become fully licensed, say as a capital raiser, because it is a good amount of testing with your SIE, your Series 7, et cetera. Every state has its own regulation. So take Texas, for example, the Texas State Securities Association, I think. You can have a license to raise money from Texans for Texans, and then have a ladies or gentlemen's agreement for how you're going to get paid, whether it's going to be a few percentage points up front, or possibly a revenue share on the back end, or a piece of the equity, much like an LP or kind of the GP sort of equity. It gives you that sort of liberty. Now, as you're fully licensed, there's much more that comes into disclosure. But that said, the arrangement can still be for a linear upfront, which is pretty simple arithmetic, or getting the equivalent of a piece of the back end equity. And over the past few years, I've entertained both.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, no, that sounds great. And so if I get this correct, I just want to kind of recap your story. So 2013, you're at the wedding, your co-best man, basically you start investing in their deals as a flipper, right? 15%, you're a private money guy. You start learning about self-storage and all these kind of funds through your job. You see the kind of how you can start doing this yourself. You start kind of raising money, and you were either really an LP or a capital raiser for a self-storage or these kind of deals. And is that what you've been doing from 2014 till today, or what else have you been doing?
Sure. So, part of it is yes. And as I said, my hobby has kind of become what I'm choosing, because I feel, one should never truly go on the beach and retire permanently. I think if you have education to share and folks to mentor, that's a great way to continue living life, and frankly, live a long life and live a healthy life. So, and that will always be my thing. Now, that said, in terms of livelihood, I think it comes to these, call it a third light bulb moment. I think it's a good way to look at this. So in 2017, I'm on a plane to Las Vegas. I see a guy I knew, and in between us is a guy with a big pink cowboy hat. And I only bring that up because it was on the way to Vegas, not on the way back, that these guys were all jazzed in the morning. But outside of that, good friend now, Henry Yoshida, and I knew Henry, Goldman Sachs just gobbled up his previous company. And I'm saying, hey, Henry, did you know, I have a great, you got to check out this storage deal. And did you know you can use your retirement dollars? And the end of that conversation, of course, is me emailing him the deck, but also this packet on how to, get with the custodian and all this. And in Henry's mind, the wheels were already turning. I didn't know this at the time, to say, hey, instead of this 100-page, PDF and everything you go through with, I call it a legacy custodian in the space, how can we eliminate all the friction legally possible so folks can make it quick and easy to sign up for one of these self-directed accounts and go through? So this was in late 17 as my light bulb moment. And then in terms of an education, Craig, as you know, going to these shows, everybody I feel is a true expert on stage. So once again, much like my days in self-storage, fast forward to 2018, 2019, I chose to be on the founding team of Rocket Dollar and then be a sponge at these shows with folks that whatever is your real estate niche, just had such a tremendous expertise in. And I know, in your past world of Bigger Pockets, I mean, wow, anybody there that's been a name, I probably had a one-on-one with, and gained a little piece of education from them. And now coming full circle, I can share that as I'm talking to investors, because I'm not pitching my deal to them. I'm saying, hey guys, here's just some insights I have as an LP. If my deal makes sense, great. If not, here's my experience with, dozens of other folks.
Can you speak to a little bit about what Rocket Dollar does? I know you guys do self-directed IRAs. Are there other products there that you're helping people invest with?
Yeah, it's a dynamite question. And I love this. So, and I say this in a very specific order. So Rocket Dollar is a checkbook control self-directed provider versus being a custodial SDIRA shop as in the product. So historically, for the past 50 years, it would primarily be the self-directed IRA. You would go to a custodian, get your money over there anytime. Let's say, I invest 25K with Craig every quarter. Both he and I would be stuck on the phone with some legacy custodian to fill out their paperwork for sake of, even though the money would ultimately go, we would lose about an hour of our time. So not too beneficial. Separately, Rocket Dollar says, listen, the rules are pretty simple. Don't invest in yourself or your linear family is the general rule. Everything else more or less is in play. And we want you to have that checkbook control. So whether it's a solo 401k, which is a separate product from the SDIRA, or within the SDIRA world, it is created as an IRA LLC model, which means the custodian in the background checks the box on the LLC and says it's a good asset. So I'll pause there because I can nerd out in any sort of direction, but I would clarify, going back to your question, the solo 401k is extremely powerful, and especially at this time of year.
Right. Okay. So what I'm gathering, to put it in maybe less nerdy terms, is your Rocket Dollar is basically a place where, if you have your 401k with, a Fidelity or a Vanguard or something like that, like you're really not able to invest in anything except the stock market, index funds, stuff like that. By moving your money over to Rocket Dollar or some other self-directed, not custodian, but self-directed platform, you can then basically invest in real estate and invest loans with people, all those kind of things. And the SDIRA is the self-directed IRA. So that's basically the same thing as an IRA, but again, instead of just investing in the market, you can invest in self-directed. And why don't you tell us the difference between a solo 401k and just a regular 401k?
Sure. So a regular 401k is probably what everybody knows here. That's what you have at your company. And you probably have 10 choices. And when you leave your company, it probably goes, say, from a Voya to Fidelity. It becomes a rollover IRA. And you get a bit more choices. Let's say you're on the Fidelity platform in Vanguard. That said, you're limited to what's ever on their platform. You cannot invest in, a friend's startup, real estate, etc. You need to be in a quote unquote self-directed account, one of which is a solo 401k, which is for self-employed individuals, or say a husband-wife team without W-2 employees. And this is a much more, all else equal, this is very powerful. So some of the product attributes is not only do you get to max, kind of quote unquote, max out your 401k as your W-2 buddies with that $19,500, you can also take a percentage of your net earnings. So let's give a real simple example. A realtor, let's say she made $100,000 this year. Of the 1.3 million realtors in the country, everybody's a 1099. It's kind of by definition means you're self-employed. So with this 100,000, the first 19.5 can go as a contribution, and then also 20% of your net earnings, your employer earnings. So right here in this little example, you can defer, not pay taxes on roughly 40,000. And based on kind of that quick math, you're looking at close to, mid 50s a year. If it's a husband-wife team, once again, you're over 100. And that's pretty powerful. So you get the kind of the employee benefit, as you might have been familiar with in W-2 world, but also this other, much larger benefit that you can lower your tax basis now to go into your plan, and then thereafter, once again, invest in what you want when you want.
Just to be clear, and I should know this, but I don't. I'm curious if the solo 401k and the SEP IRA are those different products?
They're
Sounds
different
like they might
products.
be.
Yeah, no, great question. They're different products. They're similar in terms of the contribution amounts. Where they differ is what you can do. So the solo 401k gives you that ability to, once again, really invest in what you want, when you want. And there are some, I don't want to misspeak, I'm not a SEP expert, but at least in the solo 401k, one thing that I do love is the ability to borrow. You can borrow up to $50,000 or half the value of the plan. So as long as you pay yourself back over 5 years. So why is this relevant? Let's say you're self-employed and you, before you even do a friends and family fundraise, you say, you know what, let me just borrow some money that I've been putting away for a few years for myself. And if things go well, that's great. And if it doesn't, maybe I retreat and get another W-2 job. And what's beautiful here is you can do whatever you want with that money. So once again, from an investment standpoint, whether it's the solo 401k or the self-directed IRA, you cannot invest in yourself or your linear family. So you can't invest in your kid's startup or buy a beach house and have your parents stay there on the weekend. And a majority of cannabis stuff is not really kosher yet, but everything else is in play. The nice thing, once again, of the solo 401k, you have that ability to borrow that money, do whatever you want with that, and pay yourself back. So it's a huge advantage, particularly for entrepreneurs. And the final thing I would share, in the season here, is that to benefit. So I know, talking, let's say all my realtor friends that had rock star years, to benefit and lower your tax basis in 2021, you have to open the solo 401k by the end of the year, by 12/31/2021, to benefit in the tax year. So just be aware of that. And it does take a few days. So, I probably would suggest doing it by, mid-December or December 20th for a shop that offers a solo 401k.
I'm glad you're saying that because I don't know how other people are, but for me, is like the year is kind of winding up. I'm like really on top of my bookkeeper and I'm like, how much tax am I going to pay? And like, do I need to invest in a syndication? Like, I'm just like looking around to make sure that I don't pay too much tax and like what I can do. So I imagine there's some other people out there that are like, oh, it's good to know about one more thing that I might be able to do before the end of the year.
Yeah. And the big thing is the opening of it too. You just want to have it open by the end of the year.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks so much. Well, I think we're towards the end here. Looks like Craig might have something he wants to say.
Yeah, one more thing, Dan. I just want to kind of see, is this what you're doing now? Is this your primary thing, Rocket Dollar, and growing that, or where are you at today?
No, we didn't even cross 2020. So Rocket Dollar, I am still involved. I came into Rocket Dollar outside of Henry and I meeting on a plane I immediately investor. I'm like, this is going to be great. And it is. The valuations are fantastic. As an advisor, I think it's smart, especially folks that have the benefit of some financial independence, to be an advisor, keep it honest, receive advisor shares, but and then also I purposely shifted out of the day-to-day, although I didn't have the COVID crystal ball, but I think, my life was moving more into the capital raising side, into the actual physical, tangible sort of real estate deals. So I'd say my primary focus, and I did have the benefit to talk to 500 real estate sponsors, probably invested with an additional 10 or so during the COVID year, when we had a little more time to, sit back and do diligence, and then decided with the gentleman and the team at BV Capital in terms of, and I call it the happy triangle of real estate. You got your kind of the tax, the underwriting side, your sticks and bricks in marketing, and particularly with these bottom two, because I think we all know marketing, you can turn the lever up or down, but to have real good real estate DNA and relationships with contractors, particularly in this market, is a good thing to have. And the team at BV shows this. So in terms of, I'd say, competency, character, and such, and BV is Texas real estate. It brings institutional quality deals to retail investors. There's over 500 accredited investors, which includes also registered investment advisors, some family offices that have come through. And I do feel what is offered is truly, it's great for a diversified portfolio. It's some multifamily, it's some industrial. And then otherwise, as I shared personally, if I'm talking to somebody and it's not this, I'm happy to share my experience of, whether it's, senior housing, otherwise, that I've invested with before.
Okay, so I want to do a quick recap of your story because it is like a little like back and forth, but I think I got it. So 2013, again, right? You're at the wedding, 15%. You're getting into house flipping. That's when you kind of understand passive income, notes, mortgages. You realize self-storage is a big thing, right? You start working that on your own. You start becoming a kind of a private money, a capital raiser for like a fund. As you're doing that, you're basically your best closing line is, did you know you can invest in your retirement accounts, right? And you realize that people probably don't know how, and there needs to be a platform for people to hold these self-directed IRAs. And so you started one, right? In Rocket Dollar. And then you realize, well, I actually don't love this, and I really want to go back to capital raising. So now you're back with it sounds maybe a different institution that is now raising capital for different things. Does that sound about right?
You got it, brother.
Awesome. And so I want to ask one last question into like, what does your passive income look like today? Is it all note investing? Is it rental? Yeah.
No, I'm thinking of my cap table because it varies. So it's there's still note investing of the major real estate sectors. So multifamily, industrial. I think I'm in a senior housing, of course, self-storage. I've done loans to female entrepreneurs that are also in, I'd say, the construction side. So not exactly on the note per se, but more on the construction, the development side. That's been great relationships and very lucrative. I'm a mentor at Capital Factory here in Austin. I do at least 50 mentor calls a year. I've invested with a few of those companies that one great company, Blended Sense, they focus on video and they do it exceptional, particularly say if you're a realtor or have a team, because you don't introduce yourself with a one-page CV these days. It's about a 90-second video, and these guys are great. Once again, everything about the company is fantastic. A few other real estate tech companies I've dropped chips in. And I said I get the benefit also just kind of being part of this Austin ecosystem here, both on the brick and mortar real estate and then on the tech side to see what's out there.
So you're the way you earn your income and the way you invest your passive income is like this basically, right? I mean, you earn your income by raising capital, and oftentimes you're just actually taking an equity stake or whatever, and that becomes your passive income, right? You take payment as passive income.
Yeah, and there's the two buckets, but I'm also not like some folks say, oh, retirements. It's funny, I've got friends that are VCs and they invest in these companies. And I'm like, use your retirement jobs. Like, I can't do that. I'm like, dude, you're 55. You're going to be 60. It becomes literally the same bucket once you turn 60 because there's no early withdrawal penalties at 59 and a half. Mm-hmm. No, but with that, I do recognize and I kind of respect the buckets that I can't touch for a while. And I get that. So that money's just constantly churning and moving back in. And then otherwise, I do have a decent, I'm using more of my liquid stuff when something may sell. Real estate's pretty cut and dry. If it's a 3-year deal, a 5-year deal, it might be plus minus 6 months. Startups, though, you do ask, and that majority of my stuff is in more real estate than on the tech side. But getting a feel, it's like, hey, 3 years down the road, if we're kind of at 3x or 5x, can I pull out some money? That's a typical question I'll ask up front, and I'll very lightly model that one in for my cash flow.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, Dan. Well, we are heading into the final part of the show. Do you have any words of wisdom for our audience before we get there?
Did you know you can use your retirement dollars to invest?
Yeah, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Who's got retirement accounts?
The final four.
Z, kick us off.
All right, Dan, our first question is, what are you reading right now?
Ooh, I got two things, and I wish I had the first book because it's by a good friend, Brian Perry, called Eternity. The cover looks like a cheesy Twilight thing, but it's a great read. He's a new author. It's written very raw and self-published, but it's the last time I went to a coffee shop and didn't put something down and then dreamed about the character. So Brian with the Y, he's fantastic. And only because it did not hit my top 5, it was number 6 for my Strength Finders. The Art of Woo was not one of my top 5, but Woo is number 6. No surprise.
Awesome.
So those are my 2 books.
Cool. What is The Art of Woo? I'm wondering if I need to add it to my book list.
I'm only on the first few pages of it, so maybe it was the nice birds here that wooed me in, to say. But yeah, it's I just say check it out, or at least Google Woo and see what it is. See if you need it.
All right. Dan, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Ooh, I'll give a, my dad said, don't shame the family name. And especially with the last name like mine, people will remember you. And I think it is pretty relevant. And I feel a lot of goodwill dividends and, good karma coming back because of just the efforts that I gave to folks over that. So I think that's
it. Don't shame the family name. I've got a unique last name as well. So yeah, anyone sees my last name, they know it's something to do with me.
And another one, sorry, just because I have all these new fancy stuff on my desk. This was a gift from my first boss down here in Austin, Texas, Ray Brimble. It says, do something. If it works, do more. If it doesn't, don't do it. So this came out of the Great Depression. But this was a gift that I've kept on my desk since 2008. So
I love it. I love that too.
All right. So question number 3, what is your why?
This is so easy. And I love how I have all this on my desk.
Just keep yourself surrounded.
Data picture. And yes, I do have a child that came out of the womb with hair. And it is mine. But it's pretty awesome. So yeah, my little dude, it's fantastic. And I'm sure all parents are, parents to be get that, but that's definitely the why is for him.
Okay. I bet you don't have this one on your desk. What is it that you keep wanting to smell despite the fact that it doesn't smell particularly good?
I wish the answer would be $2 bill. What do I want to smell? I'm going sentimental here. So this was funny. For some reason, we all had travel delays for COVID. And I brought I think I had 2 or 3 old t-shirts back at my mom's house. My dad passed a few years ago. And when we got home, my son, of course, being 5 years old, really curious, asked, and it still smelled like my dad who passed 4 years ago. So although not personal for me, I thought it was really cool. And then my son asked me a few weeks ago, and of course I washed the shirt and everything. I wore it and washed it because I don't think things should just sit there on the side forever. So not for me, but for my son, it was cool. So when we go back over the holidays, I think for him, that's kind of a unique, that's actually my new startup idea. How do you bottle a smell, through generation? So there you go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. That was more touching than I was definitely expecting it. So I like that a lot. All right, Dan, where can people find out more about you?
Sure. LinkedIn is great. I'm always on LinkedIn, and please mention that, you met me here, heard me here, and I'm very receptive to have one-on-ones with folks. And if you come to Austin, I'm buying beer or barbecue or vegan food or whatever works for you.
All right. So if you're a vegan beer or barbecue drinker and you're in Austin, make sure you hit Dan up. Or if you want to figure out how to invest your retirement as a self-directed IRA, make sure you're hitting Dan up. Dan, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. It's been a pleasure having you. It's been a long time coming because we have known you just for so darn long. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you at the next FinCon or the next something con.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Steve.
All right, Dan. We'll talk soon. And that was Dan the Man. Z, what'd you think of Dan?
I love when you don't know people's last names. You just get all goobery about it. Yep. I like Dan. I met Dan at FinCon, and I really feel like he is one of those people who gives back. He's like excited about being in the mentor space. I feel like Rocket Dollar is such a cool option for people that instead of using a custodian and doing all that, you can actually just invest seemingly from just your checking account the way that they set it up for you. So it seems like low barrier to entry to utilize those funds that may not be making as much as you want. So pretty exciting.
Yeah. And, I actually use my retirement accounts to invest in a lot of syndications because I know, and notes, because I know that's kind of what I want to do when I'm older and like have less energy. And so it's kind of like practice for me, kind of, right? Where it's like, I know that I can't use that money now. So it's okay if I don't get it back in the exact amount of time that I need. If it takes like 6 months longer, I'm kind of okay with that. But it's kind of just like, I think of it as like a practice run. So
yeah. So if you guys are curious about checking out Rocket Dollar, we do have a link in our show notes. So check it out. And there is, extra benefit for going through there. So check it out.
Check it out. And if you haven't already, please leave us a rating and a review on iTunes, on Spotify, on Amazon Music, on Apple Music, wherever you listen to us. It just helps us out tremendously, helps the show get out to many, many more people. And, if this show resonates with you, like, share it with your friends, share it with your family. I think, the more people that we can spread the knowledge of financial independence to, the better this world will be.
That's it for this episode of Investify. We hope that these nuggets of real estate wisdom lead to more savvy financial planning and a clearer path towards financial freedom. For more content like this, subscribe to the show at investify.com. Don't forget to leave a rating and share it with your friends. Together, we can transform more real estate newbies into successful and clever investors. Thank you so much for listening. See you on the next one.